Since time immemorial, it seems as though the fascinating stories, strong and faithful characters, and marvelous miracles performed in the Bible have an uncrossable gap with the evidence-based community and history. However, with the premise of the Bible being real life and actual history, what are the actual events in the Bible that are proven by science? The Tower of Babel. The Babylonians founded a city where humanity has learned to coexist and work together for one common goal: make a stairway to heaven. Humans were building steps to heaven only to stray them away further from the will of God. Up until that point, everyone on earth spoke different languages, and so, as punishment, God made the people of Babylon speak different languages. This caused disarray among the Babylonians and eventually discontinued the project. The different languages that the Babylonians spoke are said to be the seeds that grew to be the nations that we have today. Historians and anthropologists believe that the Tower of Babel may have existed in the past and have a direct connection to one of the greatest known warriors of all time, Alexander the Great. It is theorized that the Tower of Babel is the great ziggurat of Etemenanke, or the Temple of Marduk. The tower was constructed around 610 BC and was offered by King Nabopolassar, the king of Babylon, for the Babylonian deity Marduk, measuring at least 300 feet high. King Nebuchadnezzar later wrote that the tower had been originally built centuries prior, suggesting it would have coexisted with the Babylonian domination of the Hebrews. This ancient wonder would be lost later on, however, when Alexander the Great decided to rebuild it. Unfortunately, the tower was left unfinished as Alexander the Great died along with hopes of ever reaching the heavens using the tower. The Great Flooding. The book of Genesis presented both God's love and God's wrath. In Noah's story, God told him to build a huge ark, make it 3 floors, and put many rooms in it. It took many years for Noah to finish the humongous ark, with many people laughing at him. Noah was ordered to lead pairs of animals, both male and female, for each species in the ark. Whoever was not inside the ark would perish and drown. Rain poured for 40 days, with a great flood lasting for 150 days. Evidence of this great flooding has been unearthed by science. As excavations in modern-day Iraq began, beneath the surface revealed evidence of the great flooding at Shurapak around 2900 BCE, coinciding with the ancient texts and evidence suggesting a great flood in Sumeria. Regions of Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf are believed to have similar evidence with significant shifts in sea levels in the last glacial period, submerging large areas of low-lying land as a result of rapidly rising water levels. This theory has been applied in several cultures, notably by the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis, proposing a catastrophic tsunami raged across the Mediterranean Sea into the Black Sea in approximately 5600 BCE. In 2007 and 2008, a Hong Kong-based team of evangelical Christian explorers claimed to have found the remains of Noah's Ark beneath snow and volcanic debris on Turkey's Mount Ararat. Many believe that Mount Ararat was the last stop and what protected Noah and his family from the Great Flooding, and thus, where the remains would be logically found. The team claims to have found 7 large wooden compartments buried 13,000 feet, or 4,000 meters above sea level, near the peak of Mount Ararat. The team says radiocarbon-dated wood taken from the discovery site shows the discovered ark is about 4,800 years old, which coincides roughly with the time of Noah's flood implied by the Bible. 10 Plagues of Egypt. In the book of Exodus, the Israelites were under the Egyptians and were led by Moses. To escape the Egyptians, God brought down 10 calamities to ancient Egypt. The 10 plagues were that the waters of the Nile are turned to blood, frogs emerge from the Nile to infest the land, gnats or mosquitoes afflict people and animals, swarms of flies afflict the Egyptians and infest their dwellings, pestilence afflicts Egyptian livestock, boils afflict people and animals, hail with thunder and fire afflicts humans, animals, and plants, locusts devour vegetation, darkness covers the land, and death takes the firstborn humans and livestock. This catastrophe prompted the Pharaoh of Egypt to release the Israelites and stop the plagues that were killing his people. Although historians are in disagreement on whether or not the events in Exodus were just allegorical exaggeration, there is strong evidence that points to the accuracy of the 10 plagues in ancient Egypt. According to archaeological evidence, the ancient city of Pi-Ramses, situated in the Nile Delta and which served as the capital of Egypt during the reign of Ramses II, were affected by this chain of events of natural calamities, corroborating with the story in the Bible. The rising temperatures of perhaps a drought believed to have occurred around 1600 BCE in ancient Egypt is believed to be the culprit in turning the Nile River to blood red due to the increase of the algae and bacteria spread. This shift in temperature caused a change in the environment, which triggered frog populations to abandon the river and died as they did. The decline in frogs caused a change in the ecosystem in the riverbanks and saw a dramatic rise in insects. These insects quickly spread diseases to humans and affected livestock. As per the hail of fire and thunder, apart from the symbiotic connections of the first 6 plagues, it is believed that this event happened around 1628 BCE, known as the eruption of Thera. Estimated to have been one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history, ash deposits dating from this event have been found in the Nile region and were evidence of the 7th plague that occurred in the Bible. Evidence of Goliath. David versus Goliath is one of the most famous and recognizable stories in the Bible, as it teaches the very importance of faith and courage. One day, David's brothers among the Israelites were called on to fight the Palestine army that had gathered for war. Among the Palestine army was Goliath, a 9-foot-tall giant who stayed in the front lines for 40 days and mocked the Israelites, who were scared and doing nothing, and God himself. However, when David heard Goliath mocking God, he volunteered to fight Goliath. Wearing nothing for armor and only a sling and 5 smooth stones as weapons, David put a rock in his sling and swung one of the rocks at Goliath's head. The rock sank into the giant's forehead and he fell. David then picked up Goliath's sword and used it to kill Goliath and cut off his head. The famous biblical epic may have actually occurred in real life, and there is plenty of historical evidence to back it up. Archaeologists from Bar-Ilan University have unearthed evidence of a Palestinian man named Goliath from the biblical narrative. While digging at Tel Safi, the biblical city of Gath of the Philistines, the archaeologists discovered a small pottery sherd that mentions 2 names very similar to the name Goliath. This sherd is the oldest Philistine inscription ever found. The remarkable part of the find is that Tel Safi, or Gath, located on the Israeli coast between Ashkelon and Jerusalem, is the same town that the Bible claims is the birthplace of Goliath. Archaeologists place the date around the 10th or 9th centuries BCE, which falls in the same time period as the United Kingdom of ancient Israel. The Star of Bethlehem. The star on top of your Christmas tree is actually a symbol from the Bible known as the Star of Bethlehem. According to the book of Matthew, after the birth of Jesus Christ, a bright star with its tail pointing towards earth illuminated the night sky. The Magi, or the 3 wise men in some interpretations, followed the star and led them to Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, to offer their gifts. The description of the star was all too familiar to modern-day astronomers and is a subject of plenty of scholarly discussions. Some believed it was a supernova explosion, others a comet or a conjunction of planets associated with specific constellations that would herald the birth of a king in Israel. Some have suggested that none of these astronomical events can adequately account for all that Matthew tells us within the context of his worldview. But what really is the Bethlehem star according to science? The great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn similarly illuminated the night sky in 2020 as the 2 biggest planets appeared as one bright celestial body in the sky. Similar planetary conjunction occurred around the accepted time frame of the birth of Jesus Christ. specifically the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus around 3 BCE. This conjunction may be the Christmas star or Bethlehem star that Matthew described and what the Magi or 3 kings followed in the scriptures. Evidence of Jesus Christ. Perhaps one of the most important figures in the world and the most recognizable character from the Bible is Jesus Christ, Son of God. Later on in his life, Jesus was captured by the Romans and was crucified, died, buried, and was resurrected after 3 days. Many Christians believe that Jesus was crucified and died for our sins. Historian Flavius Josephus first mentions Jesus twice in his ancient written text known as the Jewish Antiquities, which was written in 93 AD. He was born a few years after the crucifixion of Jesus around 37 AD and was a well-connected aristocrat and military leader in Palestine who served as a commander in Galilee during the first Jewish revolt against Rome between 66 and 70 AD. Although he was not a follower of Jesus, Flavius was around the time early churches were founded, so he knew people who had heard and knew Jesus Christ. In one passage of Jewish Antiquities that recounts an unlawful execution, Josephus identifies the victim James as the brother of Jesus who is called Messiah. In a lengthier passage about Jesus, known as the Testimonium Flavianum, Josephus describes a man who did surprising deeds and was condemned to be crucified by Pilate. Even in Roman texts, which were believed to not have any Christian bias, Jesus appeared. In the Annals of the Imperial Rome of Tacitus, a Roman senator and historian, it was mentioned that Emperor Nero falsely blamed the persons commonly called Christians, who were hated for their enormities. Christus, the founder of the name, was put to death by Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea in the reign of Tiberius. Jesus, or Christus in Tacitus's accounts, was the founder of the people called Christians and was ordered to be crucified by Pontius Pilate. History and science have corroborated these biblical events and proven that there may be truth in these scriptures. The stories of science and the Bible complement each other, and perhaps by bridging the gap between the two, we may come to an understanding of the truth about divine existence.